What's up, NBA fans? I hope you're having an excellent day because I certainly today I'd like to discuss the ranking that ESPN released of the top 10 NBA players. It's actually a top 100 list, but analyzing all 100 players seems a bit tedious. I'd prefer to focus on the top 10 and provide a brief analysis of each name, whether I agree with their placement, if there's someone who should have made the top 10, or perhaps who I would remove. So let's quickly go through the top 10. In 10th place, we have Anthony Edwards. Ninth place goes to Kevin Durant. 8th is Joel Embiid. LeBron James comes in at 7th. Stephen Curry is 6th. 5th place belongs to Jason Tatum. 4th is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Giannis Antetokounmpo takes 3rd place. And in 2nd, we have Luka Doncic. And first of all, we have Nikola Jokic. Honestly, this list isn't far from reality. I think for the most part, I almost agree. In fact, I found other parts of the list more controversial, like in the top 50 or 100, where you suddenly see very good players behind not so good ones, which makes you pause and think. But clearly, it's easier to analyze if we focus on the league's top 10, because these players are definitely the most important on their teams. They're the ones who win the most games in the season and have made the best showings in recent playoffs. So, briefly mentioning and looking at Twitter a bit, the name that sparked the most debate was Jason Tatum compared to Anthony Edwards. Many people are saying Edwards is. I personally disagree, and clearly the stats lean a bit more in Anthony Edwards' favor, which is normal as this season. But he's always. Karl Anthony Towns is great. Rudy Gobert is also excellent, but they perhaps stand out more for their defense. For Towns, not as much, but I think there's not as much to spread. 3 players too good on offense. In contrast, for the Celtics, Jason Tatum averages competitive stats with 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. But he's on a team that always wins, surrounded by Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, a really strong competitive team, so it seems a bit unfair to compare. Well, Jason Tatum deserves praise, especially as the current NBA champion. Many argue the finals MVP should have gone to Jaylen Brown, others to Tatum. Personally, focusing on the finals performance, I slightly preferred Tatum. In regular season, I might lean towards Brown, but in the finals, Tatum was more convincing to me. Being on a championship team and one of its top 2 players undoubtedly puts you in the top 10 conversation. Anthony Edwards honestly has been solid since entering the NBA, but I'd say he's only been at a top NBA level for 2 seasons. Let's not get carried away. Remember, Jason Tatum has played in 2 NBA finals, I think. Maybe 3, I'm not sure, but I believe it's just 2. He won 1 and lost 1 to Curry. Edwards hasn't achieved anything truly significant in the NBA yet. To be frank, if he retired tomorrow, he'd be remembered as a good player, but that's not enough. It's not enough to rank above someone like Jason Tatum. Now I'd put Anthony Edwards behind Durant, Embiid, LeBron, or Curry. Let's briefly analyze this. I personally know that Kevin Durant has many fans, understandably, as he was one of the league's top 3 players back when he was with Golden State. But personally, since he joined the Nets, I felt his level has dropped. Well, not dropped exactly, let me correct that. Rather, it's below what he used to. Truth is, he doesn't give the impression his teams are title contenders since leaving Golden State. We know he'll average 28 or 29 points per game, but it feels more like he's one of those players who'll put up great necessarily win you the game. In fact, it reminds me a bit of LeBron in that sense, with the Lakers being more dependent, because LeBron, he averages points to break records, not win games, and that's the reality. This happens with players who have great stats, and for me, Kevin Durant is an example. I wouldn't rank Durant above Anthony Edwards right now. If we're focusing on the present or the last 3 years, context is important. Edwards has been one of the best defenders recently. Maybe less so this year, but we shouldn't dismiss him entirely. So I'd rank Anthony Edwards higher because Edwards wins games. Besides great stats, his impact is about winning. With Durant, I don't feel he's a player who wins games. He contributes, adds value, but doesn't clinch victories. For example, Giannis Antetokounmpo is a player who wins games for me. I don't need to have Giannis surrounded by stars to know his team will compete for playoffs. With Kevin Durant, his star-studded team already raises doubts about playoff entry. Now imagine if his team only depended on Durant. I definitely wouldn't rank him there. As for Joel Embiid, they ranked him too low, and I get why. Injuries. He was out half the season, but I don't agree with putting him in 8th place. I'm going to put him in 6th or 5th. Why? Because throughout last season, when he was healthy, the top MVP candidate was Joel Embiid. He would have been MVP if not for the injuries. He was averaging over 34 points per game, over 12 rebounds, and his team was one of the top three in the. They were trailing the Celtics, and I think Oklahoma was the other team. In fact, it was just the conference, as the Celtics were the only team behind. But that's not the point. What I want to focus on, friends, is that I think Joel Embiid was a bit underappreciated here, but I can understand why. When it comes to playoffs, he always has physical issues. Always. It seems that for the first 3-4 months of the NBA season, he's like Shaquille O'Neal, but by the end, he's more like Shaq at 44 years old. I'm really concerned about his physical conditioning. He has the potential to be the league's best player. In fact, I think in a normal game when everyone's rested, he's the best. But long term, I don't think his body holds up. Unfortunately, the NBA's 82-game season schedule is too physically demanding for him. Sometimes I feel like the NBA season is too short. I don't know if you get the same feeling, but it starts in October, ends in June, and then players have 4 months off. If I think it'd be healthier if the season was a bit longer, but with more rest between games instead of playing every other day. Maybe they could have 5-day breaks between games. That could be better for players. It's just a thought, but it might help with the physical toll of the long season. Now, returning to Anthony Edwards, I wouldn't put him above Kevin Durant. I'd probably rank him higher than Joel Embiid, given Embiid's injury history, as I mentioned earlier. I'd place him above LeBron James, not just because he's performing better currently, but also because his team is more successful, largely due to his fundamental role in their wins. It's not just about his stats. His team's success matters. You can average 40 points. But if your team doesn't make the playoffs, or at least the conference finals, those numbers become less significant. In fact, James Harden's case shows a player who, in his prime, seems like one of the best ever. Yet his playoff performances, while not bad, somewhat tarnish his legacy. It's a shame he hasn't reached the NBA Finals. I might rank him above Steve. Less certain here. Unlike Curry, Anthony Edwards has a solid team around him. Last season, Curry struggled with Green's issues, suspensions, and fights all year. Thompson couldn't hit a shot, going 0 for 8 on threes in his final game, if I recall correctly. Stephen Curry was alone last season, yet still had an excellent year, averaging about 31 points per game. In Anthony Edwards' favor, his team is more successful, but I'm less certain here. I'd rank him above Anthony Edwards, who I'd place 6th, not above Jason Tatum. Actually, 5th place for Tatum seems quite appropriate. Tatum at 5th is fair. He's one of the league's best in my view. He's on the top team and that matters. Nikola Jokic isn't much different in that regard. What's impressive about Jokic is his constant triple-doubles. That helps. But Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are solid players too. In fact, I think they ranked Michael Porter Jr. somewhere in the 80s in the top 100 players. That's pretty high up there. And if I think about how they've ranked Michael Porter Jr., a forward on the former NBA champion team and their second best scorer alongside Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, it doesn't make sense. For instance, a rookie like Jaime Jaquez Jr., the Mexican player, is ranked higher than Michael Porter Jr. I don't think he has better stats. And he's clearly less impactful as he's just a rookie. He's not a bad player, but it seems illogical to rank him above an NBA champion who's a key player on his team, actually the 3rd best player. Anyway, for now, I'd keep Anthony Edwards in 6th place. And Jason Tatum in 6th too. Honestly, regarding LeBron and Curry, I'd put Curry above LeBron, mainly because Curry's been having better seasons with a much worse team than LeBron. I'm even tempted to put Joel Embiid above LeBron, but I'll give LeBron credit for staying healthy, so we'll leave it as is. We'll put Kevin Durant in 10th place. Now, looking at the top 5 with Jason Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and Nikola Jokic, I almost agree with this completely. Honestly, I'd make a small change here. What would you change about ESPN's top 5 current NBA players? Well, 5th place seems fine to me. I don't think Jason Tatum is entirely better than Chi, though Tatum is more well-rounded and a champion. If Jason Tatum played in Oklahoma, his stats would probably be very similar to Chi. It seems unfair to undervalue the NBA champion just because he's on the best performing team in the league. So, would I pick Jason Tatum over Chi? Yeah, thinking about it now, I'm leaning more towards that choice. While Chi has great stats, he mainly focuses on scoring and somewhat on defense. But Jason Tatum, he defends, organizes, dribbles, shoots, plays in the paint. He's a complete player on a championship team. So I put Jason Tatum 4th and Chi 5th. I keep Giannis Antetokounmpo 3rd because he's one of the most dominant players in the league. Dominant as in, like I said before, Kevin Durant's a great player with big stats, very impactful, but he's not a player who wins you games. Giannis has Durant's stats, plus he wins you games, with or without great teams around him. In fact, I feel Giannis plays even better when his team isn't as strong. I think Damian Lillard hasn't added much to the Bucks, and he'd contribute more if he focused on supporting Giannis without great teams around him. In fact, I feel Giannis plays even better when his team isn't as strong. I think Damian Lillard hasn't added much to the Bucks, and he'd contribute more if he focused on supporting Giannis. I believe Giannis is a player who guarantees everything: defense, offense, playmaking, and dribbling. He contributes immensely on both ends of the court. It's surprising that in the NBA, we often prioritize the Defensive Player of the Year award for players like Marcus Smart or Rudy Gobert based on certain defensive stats. There are players who clearly make significant contributions both offensively and defensively. In my opinion, Giannis Antetokounmpo is a better defender than Rudy Gobert. Nikola Jokic is undoubtedly a better defensive player than Rudy Gobert. I also think Jason Tatum is better, and he contributes more offensively too. Joel Embiid physically brings more to the defensive end than Rudy Gobert. Obviously, I won't include Joel Embiid in this debate because his injury history is an important factor to consider. In second and first place, Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic. I agree, but I predict Luka Doncic will win MVP this season. I think they've given Nikola Jokic too many MVPs already. He's already won 3 MVPs. At least 2 were deserved. This season, Luka winning wouldn't have been surprising. After the playoffs, it feels a bit unfair to Luka, as he had a slightly better season than Jokic, and in a tougher situation too. Luka's got Kyrie, who's in his 30s and distracted, while Jokic has an amazing team. They've got a spectacular squad built to win. In fact, they're probably top 3 favorites for the NBA title. But this season, I think Luka Doncic will win MVP. Not sure if he's better overall, though. I'm a big fan of centers. I love a tall, heavy, strong, dominant big man. He's not like Shaq, who dominate in the paint and end the game, but he's a player whose style clearly shows he's dominant in the league. Anyway, friends, I don't want to drag this video on too long. I think I've already made quite a lengthy video. I hope you NBA fans enjoyed it. I'd love to read your top 5 or 10 current NBA players in the comments. Who do you think is missing from this list? I've heard about Jaylen Brown. I have my doubts. Not sure if I'd remove Kevin Durant and add him. This needs more detailed analysis. But honestly, I don't want to make such a long video. I hope you have an excellent day. Bye-bye.